Okay, great. So thank you so much for doing this today. So before we get started, I wanted to just check. Are you in a private place?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. And do you have water, tissue, something to write on and with?
I have water. I have tissues.
Excellent. Excellent.
Oh, something to write on. Oh, that I didn't do. Okay. I don't have to write much, right?
Right. I mean, you might take notes. I might assign some homework at the end, stuff like that.
Okay. There.
And I can
Now that
always
can.
come. Perfect.
Okay.
All right. We're now good to go.
Okay.
So, tell me, we had chatted a little bit about what you might want to work on today, and it's still this idea that you'd like to be doing your personal peace procedure, and you haven't been able to move on that. So
Right.
give me a little bit about that.
So, I was having great success doing them, and then it's like I started uh, finding a lot of resistance and excuses to not doing it, and started asking myself, so what's this about? And I started realizing that there's actually a fear here that if I clear, for example, one of my big issues has been anger, and I've come to realize that it's like mm, my weapon or my modus operandi for going through life. If I have a challenge or something, I could always just get angry and you know and react that way. And if I heal my tendency to anger, then who am I without it? And so it's like, oh, I got a feeling that that's standing in the way of me really doing, because there's a part of me that just really wants to do the PPPs all the time and just clear stuff, clear stuff, clear stuff, so that I no longer have buttons,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
so then I have that resistance. So that's what I want to work on, is whatever it is that I can do to help clear that resistance.
Okay. All right. And so you've identified that part of that resistance is understanding that if you get rid of like the anger that you have through some of the events that happened in the past that you would potentially be working on with the PPP,
Yeah,
then who would you be without it?
right.
Okay.
So it's like a fear of the unknown.
Okay. Now I'm understanding. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about that. Um, What does that exactly mean? Like in your worst case scenario, you get rid of all this anger, then what who might you be? In your mind, can you come up with some version of who you might be without the anger?
Well, the word that comes to mind is vulnerable. It's like the anger has been my weapon and my shield. And that's how I would protect myself. If I don't have that, then um, I feel like I'm going to be vulnerable.
Okay. Okay. And so, do you know what some of the triggers are for the anger when the anger pops up? Is there like, can you think of when it's likely to show up? Is there a certain person or scenario that would have to happen in order for that anger to be triggered?
Um,
When's the next time you're likely to be angry?
um, in um, in relationship, uh, sometimes I experience triggers um, that it seems like they're connected to my family, my upbringing. Um, um,
So give me an example. Just give me an example made up of when you're likely to feel angry again.
okay, made up. Um, in talking with my spouse, um, I may say something carefully worded a certain way, and it doesn't get heard the same way that I intended. Um, and then um, it causes a different reaction than what I anticipated. And then I get angry because I carefully chose my words for a reason, and then they get misconstrued, misheard, and then um,
Yeah. Okay.
Like I had an exact example of that happen just uh, not yesterday, but the evening before.
Okay. So tell me about that. What
Okay.
happened?
Um, uh, my wife was uh, asking me a question about something from her past that she wanted me to give her uh, a more clarified response to. And so I made the effort to give her what she asked for. And in my doing so, um, what I thought I was communicating and what she heard were not the same. There's a mismatch. And
So she
as
repeated it or she said it in a different
she
way?
she said it in a different way.
Okay.
So and I had and then from what I said, she launched into calling me a liar,
Okay.
and so I had anger at that.
Okay. All right. So I want you to think about that scenario and imagine that instead of getting angry, you would have cleared your triggers from all of the stuff that you cleared in your PPP and you acted in a vulnerable place. What would that sound like or look like or feel like if you acted not the anger, she called me a liar, I'm angry, but if you had cleared all the triggers from the past and were very vulnerable, what might that be like? What would you say? What would you do? How would you feel?
Um, so is this like what I think would be the idealized?
Yeah.
Okay. Idealized was I wouldn't take it personal
Okay.
and I would just calmly uh, respond to her that she must not have understood what I said, and I would have just calmly repeated um, instead of, you know, my reaction.
Okay. And so thinking about doing that, is there any fear?
Um,
And what is it? What is the fear? If you were to actually show up as vulnerable, as not taking it personal, as calmly responding and repeating back.
it what's coming up um, this reminds me of growing up and it's basically it's feels like it has to do with power and control um,
So if you respond in that way, the fear is
I won't be able to be in control or uh, it's it's not
okay.
real clear but
Okay,
it's
I think we'll get more clarity once we start
okay.
tapping. So fear 0 to 10, I won't be in control. If that happens, and I'm more vulnerable instead of angry, I won't be in control. 0 to 10 on that fear.
um, 6.
All right. Do you feel that anywhere in your body?
Yeah, my attention's to my belly, so I'd say that.
Okay. And if you get more clarity or something else floats in or we need to change it or tweak it, let me know because really the focus here needs to be on me using your words as much as I can.
Right. Okay.
All right. All right. So even though I feel all this fear in my belly,
Even though I feel all this fear in my belly,
just imagining responding in a different way.
just imagining responding in a different way,
Just thinking about the other night
just thinking about the other night
when she called me a liar.
when she called me a liar,
Just imagining that I would have been more vulnerable.
just imagining I would have been more vulnerable.
Have all this fear that I wouldn't be in control.
I have all this fear I wouldn't be in control.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all this fear in my belly,
Even though I have all this fear in my belly,
just imagining what happened the other night.
just imagining what happened the other night,
And instead of getting angry,
instead of getting angry,
I would have been vulnerable.
I would have been vulnerable.
And that brings up fear.
And that brings up fear.
I wouldn't be in control.
I wouldn't be in control.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all of this fear
Even though I feel all of this fear
in my belly,
in my belly.
what if I showed up vulnerable instead of angry?
What if I showed up vulnerable instead of angry?
Just thinking about the other day.
Just thinking about the other day.
And I got angry.
And I got angry.
She called me a liar.
She called me a liar.
It feels like I wouldn't be in control
Feels like I wouldn't be in control
if I just showed up vulnerable.
if I just showed up vulnerable.
I deeply, completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Good. All this fear in my belly.
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 Okay.
I do a lot of yawning when I'm
That's
clearing.
good. That's good. That's pretty obvious. So that
Yeah.
makes it easy for me. So so thinking about that, and instead of getting angry, you would have shown up as vulnerable. You wouldn't take it personally. You'd calmly respond. Is there still a fear? Well, then I wouldn't be in control.
No, that's it. It shifted. The fear's gone. It actually feels good. I don't know how to describe it. Besides that, it just feels good, like appropriate.
Okay. Okay. So now let's come up with a future scenario where the same thing is happening. There's a
Okay.
conversation and you are deciding how to say it, and you say it in the way that you feel is carefully crafted, and you tell your partner that, and she has a different response than you had thought she'd have because you had crafted this so carefully. Imagine this happening in the next day or two. And is it still bringing up anger or fear?
The frustration part of anger. It'd be
Okay.
more frustration.
Okay. And 0 to 10.
Oh, that's pretty high. I would say at least an 8.
An 8. Do you feel that frustration anywhere in your body?
Both chest and belly.
Okay. Great. Even though I feel this frustration
Even though I feel this frustration
in my chest and belly,
in my chest and belly,
just thinking about the scenario,
just thinking about the scenario,
we'll be having a conversation.
we'll be having a conversation.
I'll carefully craft what I'm saying,
I'll carefully craft what I'm saying,
and she's not hearing it in the same way,
and she's not hearing it in the same way.
feeling all this frustration.
Feeling all of this frustration.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel this frustration in my chest and belly,
Even though I feel this frustration in my chest and belly,
just imagining this conversation
just imagining this conversation
where I carefully thought of how I was going to say something,
where I carefully thought of how I was going to say something,
and it's being heard in a different way.
and it's being heard in a different way.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all this frustration in my chest and belly,
Even though I feel all this frustration in my chest and belly,
just imagining having this conversation,
just imagining having this conversation,
and it's not being heard the way I had intended,
and it's not being heard the way I had intended,
the way I carefully crafted what I was going to say,
the way I carefully crafted what I was going to say,
feeling all this frustration.
feeling all this frustration.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Good. This frustration in my chest and belly.
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 Okay. Thinking about that in the next few days, you're going to have this conversation. You're going to carefully word what you're going to say. You say something, and it's being heard in a different way.
Okay, Still feeling it in my belly and still frustration, but not as strong.
0 to 10.
Feels like about a 4.
Okay. And it's still the part where it's not being heard the way that I meant.
Yes,
Okay.
right.
All right. Even though I feel this frustration in my belly,
Even though I feel this frustration in my belly,
just thinking about that conversation,
just thinking about that conversation,
it's not being heard the way I wanted it to be heard.
it's not being heard the way I wanted it heard.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel this frustration in my belly,
Even though I feel this frustration in my belly,
just imagining this conversation
just imagining this conversation
where I've carefully crafted what I'm going to say,
where I've carefully crafted what I'm going to say,
and it's not being heard that way.
and it's not being heard that way.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel this frustration in my belly,
Even though I feel this frustration in my belly,
just imagining that conversation
just imagining that conversation
where I've carefully thought of how I'm going to say something,
where I've carefully thought of how I'm going to say something,
and it's not being heard that way.
and it's not being heard that way.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
This frustration in my belly,
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 this frustration in my
this
belly,
frustration in my belly,
this frustration in my belly,
frustration in my belly,
this frustration in my belly.
this frustration in my belly.
Good. Okay. Thinking about that scenario now, frustration 0 to 10.
1. Yeah, a 1.
Still in your belly?
Yeah, still in my belly.
And is it still frustration, or would you call it something else?
Disappointment.
And say a little bit more. Disappointment at what?
Disappointment that I went to all that effort and it was of no use.
Yep. Great. Is that a little higher than 1?
No, it still feels like it's a 1. There's another word that comes in as a resignation. In other words, in the past, I would carefully work on trying to say it the right way to get the desired result. And so there's this disappointment that it doesn't work, in a resignation. It's like, it is what it is type of thing. It's like,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Even though I feel this disappointment and resignation,
even though I feel this disappointment and resignation,
just thinking about that conversation,
just thinking about that conversation,
I would have gone to all that trouble and all that effort,
would have gone to all that trouble and all that effort,
and it was of no use.
and it was of no use.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel this resignation and disappointment,
even though I feel this resignation and disappointment,
just thinking about that scenario,
just thinking about that scenario,
that I would have gone to all that effort,
that would have gone to all that effort,
and it was still of no use.
and it was still of no use.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel this resignation and disappointment,
even though I feel this resignation and disappointment,
that I would have gone to all that effort,
that would have gone to all that effort,
in that conversation,
and
it was still of no use.
And it was still of no use.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Great. This resignation and disappointment.
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 This resignation and disappointment. Yeah, as we were doing that round, I had the beginnings of a grin, and so I'm trying to, it's like I felt like I had a shift. I'm trying to find the right words to describe it. I guess I'm reminded about it's the taking it personal piece that uh, I'm not responsible for how they take it. You know, if I've done my best to share what my feelings, my truth is, it's not my, you know, I need to not be taking it personal that they didn't hear it that well because they have to go through their filtration system and that's based on what they're feeling and what they've had in the past and it's not my responsibility. So yeah, it's like there's the grin was like it's silly to take responsibility for how they react.
Yeah,
So
good. Okay, good. All right. So just thinking about that scenario, really thinking about it, it's going to happen again. There's this conversation that happens. You've carefully crafted it. You say speak your truth and what you want to say, and it's not coming off. They're not hearing it the way you intended. Just thinking about all that and looking at that and maybe closing your eyes and tuning in. Is that all a zero?
yeah, I'm not feeling a charge on it.
Okay.
It's more like, isn't that interesting? I went with all that
All
effort
right.
and
All right. All right. Good.
yeah.
Good. So now let's go back to the idea that if you clear all of your anger and you respond in a vulnerable way, so let's just imagine in a few days you're going to respond in a vulnerable way and you're going to be calm and not take it personal and respond calmly and repeat calmly. If you act that way, is there any fear?
Well, s still a little bit of fear of the unknown. I know what to expect if I go with the anger. I'm going to have a battle or a war, and I know how to muster up enough anger to win the war and crush the other person and stuff like that. But if I am vulnerable and rational and calm, uh, I don't know what that's going to look like. It
Okay.
may be good, but who knows? There's an unknown piece.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to come back to that. I'm just going to pin it. But
Okay.
I want to go into why you think that that happens and where does it's more powerful and I have control if I get angry. Where do
Where
you
does
think
that?
that comes from?
Uh, Childhood probably. Um, I had uh, four brothers and very intelligent, critical family unit, and so uh, it was always very competitive. And if you showed any weakness, you know, it didn't go well.
Ah,
You couldn't be vulnerable. It would be really a not good thing to be vulnerable in that family.
okay. Do you remember any time where you were even close to being vulnerable or you showed any kind of weakness?
I'm I'm having um, it's it's like a fuzzy flash of something between me and my older brother. Um, he
Okay.
was less than a year older than me, but he outweighed me by 20 pounds, and he bullied the crap out of me. And this in this fuzzy flash, it's like something had happened, and I was uh, crying,
Yeah.
and he just really got a intense look of like you baby. He said you baby, and it's just really making fun of me um,
Okay.
and
And thinking about that now, even though it's a fuzzy flash, what's the emotion that's coming up for you?
well, I felt like I got crushed.
And thinking about it now, are you feeling crushed or a different emotion?
Thinking about it now,
Mm-hmm.
Sad. So
Sad.
that little me that was so sensitive and um, had to put on this armor called anger to survive.
Okay. And give me the sadness that you're feeling now looking at that event, 0 to 10 on sadness.
That's that's pretty high.
Okay, let's start tapping.
Yeah,
Let's start tapping.
that's probably a 10.
Okay. Even though I feel all of this sadness,
Even though I feel all of this sadness,
just thinking about that flash
just thinking about that flash
where I see my older brother,
where I see my older brother,
I'm crying,
I'm crying.
and he's giving me that really intense look,
He's giving me that really intense look,
saying, "You baby."
saying, "You baby."
I deeply and completely accept myself,
I deeply and completely accept myself,
even though I feel all of his sadness.
even though I feel all of the sadness.
Just looking at that fuzzy flash of a memory.
Just looking at that fuzzy flash of a memory.
My brother sees me crying,
My brother sees me crying.
and he's giving me that intense look.
He's giving me that intense look.
You baby.
You baby.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself. That look and what he said crushed me.
Crushed me. Great. Thanks for
Yeah,
telling me.
yeah.
Even though I feel crushed
Even though I feel crushed,
and I feel all of his sadness,
I feel all of the sadness.
he gave me that intense look,
He gave me that intense look.
and he said, "You baby."
He said, "You baby."
And that crushed me.
And that crushed me.
I deeply and completely accept
I
myself.
deeply and completely accept myself.
Good. This sadness,
The sadness,
he crushed me.
he crushed me.
This sadness,
The sadness,
he crushed me.
he crushed me.
He crushed me with that look.
He crushed me with that look.
He crushed me with you baby.
He crushed me with you baby.
All of his sadness.
All this sadness.
All of his sadness.
All of this sadness.
All right. Thinking about that now. 0 to 10 on the sadness.
It has dropped some. Let's see. 7.
Okay. All right. Even though I feel all of his sadness,
Even though I feel all of this sadness,
I was crying.
I was crying.
He gave me that really intense look,
He gave me that really intense look.
and he said, "You baby."
And he said, "You baby."
He crushed me.
He crushed me.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all of his sadness,
Even though I feel all of the sadness,
I was crying.
I was crying.
He gave me that really intense look.
He gave me that really intense look.
He said, "You baby."
And he said, "You baby."
He crushed me.
He crushed me.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all of his sadness,
Even though I feel all of the sadness,
he gave me that really intense look.
he gave me that really intense look.
And he said, "You baby."
And he said, "You baby."
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Good. This sadness,
The sadness,
this sadness,
the sadness,
he crushed me,
he crushed me.
giving me that really intense look.
Give me that really intense look.
Said, "You baby."
Said, "You baby."
He crushed me.
He crushed me.
All of his sadness,
All the sadness,
all of his sadness.
all of the sadness. So an aspect started showing up related to my parents. My older brother was firstborn, and he was the favorite of my dad. And I had this flash, it's like where I tried telling my dad or something. Maybe both, but it feels like it was more my dad. And he wasn't there for me. He just basically said toughen up type of thing.
Toughen up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Don't be such a crybaby.
So thinking about that now, what are you feeling?
Well, it went up.
Yeah.
My dad was supposed to be there to protect me, and um, he
Yep.
wasn't.
Yeah.
That's a 10.
Okay. Let's start tapping. All right. Even though.
Even though
And the 10 is still sadness or different emotion?
I would say probably sadness. I'm just a hair away from crying right now.
Okay. So even though I feel all of his sadness,
Even though I feel all of this sadness,
I went to tell my dad,
I went to tell my dad.
and he said something like, toughen up.
He said something like, toughen up.
Don't be a crybaby.
Don't be a crybaby.
And he wasn't there for me.
He wasn't there for me.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all of his sadness,
Even though I feel all of this sadness,
trying to tell dad.
trying to tell dad.
And he's telling me to be tough.
He's telling me to be tough.
He says, don't be such a crybaby.
Don't be such a crybaby.
And he wasn't there for me.
And he wasn't there for me.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all of his sadness,
Even though I feel all of this sadness,
just thinking about dad,
just thinking about dad,
the way he responded when I tried to tell him,
the way he responded when I tried to tell him,
he told me to be tougher,
told me to be tougher,
told me not to be such a crybaby.
told me not to be such a crybaby.
He wasn't there for me the way I needed him to.
Wasn't there for me the way I needed him to.
And no wonder it doesn't feel okay to be vulnerable.
It's not safe to be vulnerable. It's
Great.
not safe to be sensitive.
Great. I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Great. Let's tap on the points. All of his sadness.
All this sadness.
It's not safe to be vulnerable.
It's not safe to be vulnerable.
All of his sadness.
All this sadness.
It's not safe to be vulnerable.
It's not safe to be vulnerable.
It's not safe to be sensitive.
It's not safe to be sensitive.
All of his sadness.
All the sadness.
All of his sadness.
All the sadness.
All of his sadness.
All the sadness. There's a lot of energy on not safe to be sensitive.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I'm going to ask you 0 to 100% true. It's not safe to be sensitive.
Now we're looking back at them.
Yeah, I'm testing on the belief that you have.
Right.
It's not safe to be sensitive. 0 to 100% true as you say that. It's not safe to be sensitive. As the global. 80% true?
80%, yeah.
Okay, great. We'll check that in a minute. Let's just go back to testing that event. So
Okay.
you tell dad, or you try to tell dad, and he talks about being tough, and he says, don't be such a crybaby. Where are we with that event? 0 to 10 on the sadness.
It has dropped. It's maybe a 4.
Okay, great. And do you feel that anywhere in your body?
Definitely belly.
Okay. All right. Even though I still feel some sadness in my belly,
Even though I still feel some sadness in my belly,
I try to tell dad.
I tried to tell dad.
He said, be tough.
He said, be tough.
Don't be a crybaby.
Don't be a crybaby.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel the sadness in my belly,
Even though I feel the sadness in my belly,
it's not safe to be sensitive.
it's not safe to be sensitive.
When I tried telling him,
I tried telling him,
he says, don't be such a crybaby.
don't be such a crybaby.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel the sadness in my belly,
Even though I feel the sadness in my belly,
trying to tell dad,
trying to tell dad,
tells me I have to be tough,
tells me I have to be tough,
tells me not to be such a crybaby.
tells me not to be such a crybaby.
It's not safe to be sensitive.
It's not safe to be sensitive.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Good. The sadness in my belly,
The sadness in my belly,
it's not safe to be sensitive.
it's not safe to be sensitive.
The sadness in my belly,
The sadness in my belly,
it's not safe to be sensitive.
it's not safe to be sensitive.
The sadness in my belly,
The sadness in my belly,
trying to tell dad,
trying to tell dad.
he says, don't be such a crybaby.
He said, don't be such a crybaby.
The sadness in my belly,
the sadness in my belly. And I was reminded of something as we were doing that. Again, it's on this not safe to be sensitive.
Hmm.
Um, my dad grew up with two of the least sensitive parents I've ever known. And for him, it was not safe to be sensitive. And as an adult, he is very insensitive. Um, the first I actually got to witness him expressing any sensitivity at all in public was after both his parents had died. Um, uh, and so I think um, that he probably was trying to uh, teach me not to be sensitive also.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And that's a nice cognitive shift. Um, okay. So thinking about that event and where you tried to say what was going on, and your father said, "You got to be tough, and don't be such a crybaby." Give me a 0 to 10 on that.
Um, I'm not feeling the charge on that. I think it's I'm recognizing that he was trying to um, prepare me for life so that I would not be hurt.
Okay. All right. Good. Um, is there, and then let's go back to the actual event where your brother is giving you that intense look and saying, "You cry, baby."
It's it's what big brothers do.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let me just do, because I want to show a additional testing method.
Okay.
How would he have said it? What tone of voice would he have used?
Oh, very like a sneer, like
Sneer.
you crybaby.
Okay, I'm going to try that. "You cry, baby. You cry, baby. Man, man." How are you? How you doing?
You're so much cuter than my brother. I can't help it. Yeah.
Okay. So, but
It's
really thinking about it,
yeah, yeah,
okay, it's gone. It seems like it's gone.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there any other time that you can think of where this whole thing might have gone on either with dad or your older brother? Let me see if we can get to one more table leg there.
Okay. Um,
And it could have been in adulthood.
it's interesting that it must be related because my mind went there.
Hmm.
So, um, as an adult, okay, so I made it a point. Again, I have four brothers, and I made it a point while I still lived near them, uh, as in within one or two states.
Hmm.
Um, I made it a point to visit each and every one of my brothers in each one of their houses. Um, it's kind of like a show of support or whatever.
Hmm.
And then I moved 12 to about 1,400 miles away, and um, trying to get any of my brothers to come visit was not easy. Um, and the older brother
Hmm.
never once came.
Hmm. Okay.
After 20 years, he has still never once came to visit me.
Okay.
So that,
Was there an opportunity where he could have, or
oh
some
yeah,
event?
he had vacation time every year. He could have come out, and he's now even retired, and he doesn't come out.
Have you
So,
invited him?
uh, yes, I have,
Think-
and not, I have not begged him,
Okay.
uh, but
When was the last time you invited him?
I think after he retired. But now I think about it, I think that my invitation was more like a guilt, not a not a sincere, but more it's like, you know. And another one with him. that was, I don't know, whether when I moved away, he was very hurt. We were fairly close at that point,
Huh.
and I moved away, and so I think that's probably part of it is that he was hurt and he probably made a vow that he just wasn't going to come out and and see me
Okay.
and support that move.
Okay.
And
Okay.
at the same time, um, I changed everything in my life from profession, uh, got divorced, moved, changed everything, and grew my hair long. And he made a comment that he wouldn't even talk to me while I had long hair. For 3 years, he wouldn't even talk to me. I don't
Okay.
acknowledge a brother with long hair.
Oh, okay. And so, thinking about that comment now, how are you feeling? It might be
It hurt.
connected.
It
Yeah,
hurt.
might
It
be
hurt.
connected to sensitive. Maybe long
Yeah.
hair is a sensitive guy has long hair. Does that
Yeah.
sound true?
And I was becoming more sensitive at the time. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that sensitivity piece probably. That's
Yeah.
probably why it came up.
Yep. So him making a comment, I won't even talk to you if you have long hair.
Right.
It's hurt 0 to 10 now, or a different emotion now as you look at it.
Um, they're still hurt.
Okay.
And uh, it's it's probably an 8 still.
Do you feel it anywhere in your body?
I feel like I'm barely holding tears back, so I
Oh,
would
well, then let's
say,
start tapping. That's
yeah,
good. All right. And even though I feel all of this hurt,
even though I feel all of this hurt,
he made that comment.
he made that comment.
I won't even talk to you because you have long hair.
I wouldn't even talk to you because you have long hair.
I deeply, completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all of this hurt,
Even though I feel all of this hurt,
he made that comment
he made that comment.
that he wasn't going to even talk to me
He wasn't even going to talk to me
because I have long hair.
because I have long hair.
I deeply, completely accept
I
myself.
deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I feel all this hurt
Even though I feel all of this hurt
because he made that comment
because he made that comment.
that he wasn't even going to talk to me.
He doesn't recognize a brother with long hair.
Who did he say that to?
He said it to me.
Directly on the phone or how?
Um,
What might it have been?
Trying to remember how he's.
All right. That's okay. You
Yeah,
got it directly. All
yeah.
right. I won't even recognize a brother with long hair.
I won't even recognize a brother with long hair.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Deeply and completely accept myself.
All this hurt.
All this hurt.
All this hurt.
All this hurt.
He said, I won't even recognize a brother with long hair.
He said I won't even recognize a brother with long hair.
It's not safe to be sensitive.
It's not safe to be sensitive.
Here I am trying to be sensitive,
Here I am trying to be sensitive.
and I have long hair.
I have long hair.
And he says, I don't even recognize a brother with long hair.
And he says I don't even recognize a brother with long hair.
I won't recognize a brother with long hair.
I won't recognize a brother with long hair.
Meaning I won't recognize a brother who's sensitive.
Meaning I won't recognize a brother who's sensitive.
All of this hurt.
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 All of this hurt. Time for some water.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right.
It's amazing after all these years to have that much emotion still hanging around you don't know. I just love this work.
All right, good. All right, so checking in, thinking about that comment that he made. I don't even recognize a brother with long hair. How hurt does that seem now?
way down, but let's see. And is it still hurt? It's more sadness now,
Okay.
and sadness for both of us, but it feels like it's more sadness for him,
Yeah.
um, because he's losing out. Um,
Okay. Let's go with that.
so yeah,
Even though I feel this sadness
even though I feel the sadness
that he made that comment,
that he made that comment,
I don't even recognize a brother with long hair.
don't even recognize her brother with long hair,
I'm feeling all this sadness for him.
feeling all the sadness for him.
He's losing out.
He's losing out.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself,
Even though I feel all of this sadness
even though I feel all of the sadness
for him.
for him.
He made that comment.
He made that comment.
He doesn't even recognize a brother with long hair.
Doesn't even recognize a brother with long hair.
I feel the sadness for him.
I feel the sadness for him.
He's losing out.
He's losing out.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Deeply and completely accept myself,
Even though I feel all this sadness for him.
even though I feel all the sadness for him.
He's losing out.
He's losing out.
Making that comment
Making that comment.
that he's not going to talk to me.
He's not going to talk to me.
He doesn't recognize a brother with long hair.
Doesn't recognize a brother with long hair.
I deeply and completely accept
I
myself.
deeply and completely accept myself.
This sadness.
The sadness.
The sadness for him.
The sadness for him.
This sadness.
The sadness.
Hearing that comment.
Hearing that comment.
This sadness.
The sadness.
He doesn't recognize a brother with long hair.
Doesn't recognize a brother with long hair.
This sadness.
The sadness.
This sadness.
The sadness. Yeah. Definitely past the hurt, the sadness for him. Still a little it's the word sympathy is coming to mind more now though. Sadness and sympathy. I have sympathy for him. It's like it's too bad that he's
Okay.
so rigid and stuck and inflexible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so 0 to 10 on that sadness.
It's low. Maybe a 2.
Okay. Great. I'm going to try some reframing, but if it's
Okay.
not landing, if it's just sounding off, let me know.
Okay.
All right. Even though I still feel a little sadness for him.
Even though I still feel a little sadness for him.
Too bad he's too inflexible.
It's too bad he's too inflexible.
It's too bad that he is not sensitive.
It's too bad that he's not sensitive.
And I like my sensitivity.
And I like my sensitivity.
Even though I still feel a little sadness for him.
Even though I still feel a little sadness for him.
He's missing out
He's missing out
on a sensitive brother
on a sensitive brother
by being so inflexible.
by being so inflexible.
I like the way that I am.
I like the way that I am.
Even though there's still a little sadness for him.
Even though there's still a little sadness for him.
He's missing out.
He's missing out.
He missed out for 3 years
He missed out for 3 years
on a pretty cool guy
on a pretty cool guy
who's sensitive.
who's sensitive and was
And I-
having and I was having a grand adventure and he missed out on it.
Okay. He missed out on my grand adventure.
He missed out on my grand adventure.
Too bad because he's inflexible.
Too bad that he's inflexible.
He's not sensitive.
He's not sensitive.
I like my sensitivity.
I like my sensitivity.
It is safe to be sensitive.
It is safe to be sensitive.
All that's
And-
landing?
And healthy. And this is something that came up. That I have a younger brother that had triple bypass years ago, and this particular older brother, the firstborn, he just had quadruple bypass
Okay.
at the time he retired. So I think that that's because he was, by his nature, he was sensitive and he wasn't allowing it. And I think
Yeah.
So I have sadness for him on that.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
survived, so that's good.
Okay. All right. There's still a little sadness for him.
Still a little sadness for him.
He missed out on my great adventure
He missed out on my great adventure
because he's inflexible.
because he was inflexible.
And it's healthy to be sensitive.
And it's healthy to be sensitive.
I like my sensitivity.
I like my sensitivity.
It feels safe to be sensitive.
It feels safe to be sensitive.
It's also
Yes.
healthy to be sensitive.
It's healthy to be sensitive.
I like my sensitivity.
I like my sensitivity. Yes, I do. I like my sensitivity.
Great. Awesome. All right, let's just say it again. It's not safe to be sensitive. 0 to 100% true.
0.
Okay, good. Okay,
It's
so
great to be sensitive.
excellent. Excellent. All right, so now tell me. I think that one of the ways that I would suggest to you, and you can write this down or I can send it to you afterwards, but
Okay.
I think it would be great to focus your personal peace procedure
Yeah.
and maybe focus it on the table legs that you have in childhood that still are maybe around the theme of it wasn't safe for me to be sensitive or vulnerable, and it got me in trouble, or I was made fun of, or it was a weakness, or the competitive parts of my family all just jumped on me whenever they saw that part of me. So I would say maybe focus your personal peace process on that first to get that out of the way so that the rest of it can flow.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you tell me, you make a commitment to yourself about when you can do it. How will we know that you're doing it? Do you like to do it on a regular basis? Do you like to tell yourself, well, one day a week I'm going to do it? Like, what would be the best thing that would work for you in terms of making a commitment?
Um, well, definitely more than once a week. Uh, I was actually doing it pretty much on a daily basis until I ran into this
Mm-hmm.
resistance, and so
Right.
um, I want to be back to doing it on a daily basis because um, I really want the freedom from all of this old stuff.
Excellent. All right. So thinking about sitting down, when would you like to start that process of doing it daily?
Um, I like to do it in the morning as soon as it warms up because my favorite place to do it is not heated, so
Great.
it's
So tomorrow morning?
so um, okay. So I got okay. Tomorrow it's going to have to be the afternoon because I got a commitment from about 8:30 in the morning till 4. So
Okay, how
tomorrow
about
will be
or the next day? You tell me. It's going to be a commitment
okay.
to yourself.
Okay. Uh, I think I'm gonna want to do it in the afternoon, actually, and see,
Okay.
because that way for sure it's warmed up enough. And so uh, because I have that other going tomorrow, we'll go with that'd be Thursday, right after lunch on Thursday. I'm gonna commit to it.
Okay, so the day after tomorrow after lunch.
Yep.
Okay, and you're going to, does it help for you to put that on a calendar or scheduler or something like that?
Yeah. And uh, yeah, I'll make sure that it gets on the schedule.
Good. And is there any resistance to either getting it on your schedule or imagining yourself starting the process Thursday afternoon?
No, it might even be hard waiting until then.
Okay. Oh, perfect. This was a great session.
Well,
Thank you
thank you.
so much.
Well, you're very welcome.